This week on Government Matters.
Enough is enough. We've had so many hacks. How many more people can be breached?
A cyber attack on the IRS was much more damaging than first expected. What's next for the agency's Get Transcript service?
A procurement might have taken 3 or 4 months to go through the various paperwork and certifications that need to be done, whereas today we can turn around a procurement in the same day or a couple days at most.
GitHub goes GWAC. What's behind their first government reselling partnership?
This is a group that includes a lot of the major business associations, and they're essentially keeping the pressure on Congress.
Lawmakers might be on vacation, but interest groups are engaged in a full-scale tug-of-war over CISA. Government Matters starts right now.
From ABC 7 and News Channel 8, this is Government Matters.
To our viewers around the world on the American Forces Network and here in the nation's capital, thanks for joining us. Government is the engine that runs this city. That's why Government Matters. Every week we'll bring you the top headlines in tech, security, and management. I'm your host, Morris Jones. Another week, another breach, this time at the IRS. Agency officials first reported the attack in May, but it's larger than they thought. Hackers access sensitive information on hundreds of thousands of taxpayers. Diane Cho has the latest.
For the federal government, call it a bad case of deja vu. First OPM, now the IRS reveals a hack was much larger than first expected. An additional 220,000 taxpayers may have had their information stolen. That's nearly triple their initial numbers to at least 334,000 people.
It's Groundhog Day. It is. And I think that's where it's now our time to stand up and say enough is enough. We've had so many hacks. How many more people can be breached?
This time, hackers use social security numbers and other personal data stolen from other sources to get past a multi-step authentication process and gain access to the agency's Get Transcript application. It allows users to view past tax returns. For those affected, the bad guys will have much more detailed information about your life, such as your salary or marital status, making it easier for them to file false returns in the future.
We don't know what they're going to do with that personal information, and that's what makes these hacks so terrifying and far-reaching.
The IRS got hacked despite a GAO audit. Last year, the government watchdog pointed out the IRS, quote, had not always effectively implemented access and other controls to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of its financial systems and information. GAO notes progress had been made, but, quote, these weaknesses and others in IRS's security program increase the risk that taxpayer and other sensitive information could be disclosed or modified without authorization. The IRS shut down the application back in May. The agency also plans to provide identity protection pins for next year's tax returns. But is it enough?
The IRS requires us to give them this information, so we should be requiring it of them that they protect it to its fullest. They should be doing everything. That includes firewalls. It includes password and authentication and identity protection. It includes policy. And last of all, it includes encryption. We should be demanding it of these agencies.
The agency says it will provide credit monitoring to those affected. The IRS also identified another 170,000 suspected attempts that were unsuccessful. Still, it says it will mail alerts to those people as well to let them know they could be at risk. For Government Matters, I'm Diane Cho.
Hundreds of government employees, including some in the White House, Congress, and law enforcement, used internet connections in their federal offices to access and pay membership fees to the cheating website Ashley Madison. It's also a security risk, as TJ Holmes reports.
The website Ashley Madison, famous for encouraging its users to secretly cheat on their spouse,
Life is short. Have an affair.
has been caught with its pants down after a group calling itself the Impact Team dumped 10 gigabytes of private customer information on the dark web. The dump reportedly includes 36 million email addresses, 9.6 million transactions, plus partial credit card information, street names, and phone numbers. More than 15,000 of the email addresses appear to originate from government and military servers, although there's been no verification. The hackers threatened to publish names and nude photos unless Ashley Madison and another site owned by Abbott Life Media are taken down.
Online extortion is something which is easy to do that in a very anonymous fashion. It has a very high return and it has a very low risk.
Coming on the heels of other high-profile attacks like those on Sony Pictures and Target, This hack appears to be motivated by ideological differences. The Impact team putting out a statement saying, "We have explained the fraud, deceit, and stupidity of Avid Life Media and their members. Now everyone gets to see their data."
TJ Holmes. In contracting headlines, FCW reports the deadline has passed for protesting the Pentagon's electronic health records deal. Leidos won the $9 billion job. No challengers were filed. The Washington Post reports MicroPact, a tech contractor based in Herndon, Virginia, will merge with Arlington software firm Iron Data. The new company will be able to work across 49 states. NextGov reports QTS, a data center company, spent $326 million on Carpathia, a cloud service provider. Analysts say QTS will now be able to compete for big federal cloud contracts. In tech matters, GitHub's first government reselling partnership. This month, DLT Solutions announced they will provide GitHub Enterprise to their public sector customers. For more, I'm joined by Ben Balter, government evangelist, attorney, and open source developer at GitHub. Ben, let's start with the basics. What is GitHub Enterprise and how does it work?
So GitHub is most well known for GitHub.com, the online software collaboration platform where more than 10 million users across 25 million projects collaborate on software. GitHub Enterprise is a clone of GitHub.com that government agencies can install behind their firewall, in their own data center, or in their own virtual private cloud.
Now, government-wide acquisition contracts, or GWACs, have a lot to do with this partnership. I'd like to read an excerpt from DLT's press release. GitHub Enterprise customers will also have access to DLT's considerable portfolio of GWACs. For federal government customers, the contracts include SOUP 5 and NIH CIO-CS. Tell us more.
So as most people probably know, government contracting is a very different animal than the private sector works. And so if you're a government agency trying to bring on modern software development practices like you might find in the private sector or Silicon Valley, there's a little bit of a language barrier. A government agency might try to procure an online public engagement platform, what you and I might call the website. So by having someone in D.C. that speaks the language of government procurement, we make it easier for government agencies to bring on best-of-breed software development tools.
Good idea. Why wasn't this done in the past?
Government paperwork. There's a lot of boxes that need to be checked, a bunch of T's that got to be crossed and I's that need to be dotted. We've gotten a lot of feedback from customers that what a procurement might have taken 3 or 4 months to go through the various paperwork and certifications that need to be done, whereas today we can turn around a procurement in the same day or a couple days at most.
DLT is one of many value-added resellers. By partnering with one company, does GitHub risk alienating others like Carahsoft, Mythics, or Ironbow Technologies?
We chose DLT because we thought there's a really great opportunity for our customers. DLT has a strong background in open source, selling products like Red Hat, and also has a package of tools for developers, DevOps, as we call it in the industry, with things like Jenkins for continuous integration, so that DLT could become the one-stop shop for government agencies looking to bring on a private sector software development workflow and pipeline into their agency.
Now, Ben, FedScoop looked at this partnership. The author raised an interesting question. Why would agencies want to use GitHub Enterprise when the standard version of GitHub is so popular? There are more than 100 repositories and thousands of federal users. So how would you answer that?
So GitHub.com is used by thousands of government agencies for public engagement, to work with software developers out in the open to make government software better. But not all government software is ready to be open source. So for government agencies that have specific compliance requirements, for whatever reason cannot trust the cloud or shared tenant environment with their code, Government Enterprise allows them to install it behind their firewall or in data centers like Amazon, GovCloud, or Azure, where they can meet certain requirements such as FedRAMP, FISMA, or HIPAA, and integrate with their existing identity management systems.
Let's take a step back for a look at the big picture. Do overly complicated federal regulations make partnerships like this necessary, meaning DLT and companies like them know the system, GitHub avoids a lot of paperwork, and everyone's happy? Is that about right?
I mean, from my own experience as a government technologist trying to buy private sector tools that were mainstay in the private sector, the government procurement system is optimized for battleships and aircraft carriers, but that system doesn't scale down. GitHub.com is mostly free or starts at $300 per per year, and you can't spend a 3 or 4 month procurement only to buy $300. So working through DLT, through GWACs, and hopefully soon things like Schedule 70, we'll be able to bring down the barrier to entry for agencies looking to bring on GitHub Enterprise and GitHub.com.
Good deal. Ben Balter with GitHub. Thanks for being with us, Ben.
Thank you very much for having me.
Congress will be on vacation for a few more weeks, but interest groups are staying busy lobbying lawmakers on the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act. Some of them want Google and Facebook to get off the fence. Insight from Politico Pro, straight ahead on Government Matters. In security matters, the tug-of-war over CISA. It's August recess on Capitol Hill. The Senate floor is quiet. But lawmakers' offices are witnessing a flood of action from groups that support and oppose the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act. For more, I'm joined by Joseph Marks, cybersecurity reporter for Politico Pro. Joe, let's start with the opposition. A group called Fight for the Future wants Facebook and Google to join their cause. Bring us up to date.
This is a group that includes a lot of the privacy think tanks, a lot of other privacy organizations, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the American Civil Liberties Union, Access, groups like that. They somewhat famously were sending faxes to members of Congress right before the bill failed to reach passage before the August recess. Now they're turning their attention to large data storage providers like Google, like Facebook, saying, you stand to share a lot of information with the government if this bill passes. There could be personally identifiable information in there about your customers and about citizens. We want you to get off the sidelines and make a statement about this bill.
Now, on the other side of the CISA divide is a coalition called Protecting America's Cyber Networks. They want lawmakers to finish the bill. Well, who are they and what steps have they taken to defend CISA?
This is a group that includes a lot of the major business associations, and they're essentially keeping their the pressure on Congress, trying to tell them, we want you to pass this in September as promised when you get back. They're also trying to take the argument away from the privacy group, saying, hey, we care about privacy too. This isn't about sharing personal information. It's about sharing cyber threat indicators, IP addresses, things like that. This isn't about your personal information, they're saying.
Tim Pawlenty, CEO of the Financial Services Roundtable, defended CISA on C-SPAN's Newsmakers this month. Here's part of that interview.
The opponents to this bill say, hey, look, we don't like this bill because we think the government's going to share my personal information. It's really important to distinguish. We're not talking about sharing personal information. We're talking about sharing cyber threat information. I wish the bill wasn't called information sharing. It should be called the Cyber Teamwork Bill. It would be a better label for it.
He may have a point. Now, privacy groups disagree. Here's a statement from the Stop Cyber Surveillance Coalition. CISA allows vast amounts of personal data to be shared with the government, even that which is not necessary to identify or respond to a cybersecurity threat. This is because CISA permits companies to leave personal and identifying information in indicators it shares with the government. So, Joe, who's telling the truth here?
You know, it's tough to tell until the bill is in its final form. One thing that's irked privacy advocates a lot is that the bill doesn't exactly say precisely what a cyber threat indicator is. And there's a reason you want to have a little bit of ambiguity there, because it can be a lot of different things at a lot of different times. But they say there's no hard and fast assurance that people's personal information won't be included in what's shared with the government. And it's also not clear exactly what the government's going to be allowed to use this information for until the bill reaches its final form. There were some amendments before Congress left for recess that would have expanded the number of things they can do with this bill, for instance, bringing criminal prosecutions, going after people's information they find for other reasons in the bill. We won't really know until they get a final bill and it gets an up or down vote on the floor whether or not how much personal information could be in it.
Now, earlier on Government Matters, we covered the New York Times ProPublica report about the Fairview program. In 2011, telecom giant AT&T started forwarding more than 1 million emails a day to NSA headquarters in Fort Meade, Maryland. Will this make the effort to sell CISA more difficult? Is it even fair to link these two issues?
It will, to the extent that it keeps the NSA in the news. You know, a lot of people said, as CISA was working its way up to passage for so many months and for a couple of different Congresses, until NSA reform passes, that's the roadblock. That needs to happen before CISA can be seriously debated and passed on the floor. NSA reform is out now. It took a lot of work to make that happen. So the more that people are thinking about NSA reform, the more difficult it's going to be for Congress to seriously consider and pass this bill, the more pressure there is going to be for them to step back from it.
I think you're exactly right. All right, before you go, let's talk about momentum. Congress has struggled to pass substantial cyber legislation for years. Do you think CISA has what it takes?
It's really not clear, and this goes back to what we were saying just a moment ago. You know, NSA reform passed, but if you look at how that passed at a point when bulk collection had actually already been stopped because they'd passed a deadline. You know, there was a lot of momentum behind that thing to get it passed, and it was still incredibly difficult. So the idea that CISA can reach that, it's very far from assured at this point.
It's good to get your insight. Joseph Marks, cybersecurity reporter for Politico Pro. Thanks again, Joe.
Thank you.
Speaking of momentum, there's a lot of buzz around the term category management. It could change the way OPM trains millions of federal workers. We break down HCaTS straight ahead on Government Matters. In Management Matters, HCaTS, Human Capital and Training Solutions. The Office of Personnel Management and the General Services Administration just released a request for proposals. They want to help agencies produce a world-class workforce and achieve their mission goals. For more, I'm joined by Jim Williams, partner in Schambach at Williams Consulting and former acting administrator at GSA. Jim, tell us more about HCaTS. What's this RFP all about, and how much is it worth?
Well, I think this is a great achievement by OPM and GSA coming together, and this is part of GSA's category management, the strategic sourcing effort that's being going on across government. This is in the services area, particularly in human capital and training services. So just getting to this point to put this large RFP out is a success story.
Now, OPM has tried this before. Federal News Radio reports OPM initially released a solicitation for a new training and management contract in 2012, but faced 11 protests between May and July of 2013. OPM eventually canceled the multiple award contract that some estimated to be worth $2 billion. Sounds like a mess, Jim. What's different this time around?
Well, I think what's different is that they're partnering with GSA, and I think OPM has new people on this, but GSA, people like Tiffany Hickson, Jim Galoni, Alex Rouse, these are top-notch procurement people. And what they've really done is engage the private sector as opposed to not talking to them. And by engaging with them, listening to them, and crafting an RFP that reflects the best views possible, I think this will be a success story.
To an outsider, it seems strange that the Office of Personnel Management needs to outsource training and development. Why aren't they equipped to educate their own people?
Well, I think OPM is more of a policy and oversight organization, and they shouldn't be duplicating what is readily available in the private sector. There's a lot of companies that do a great job in this area of providing customized training, providing human capital strategies, and organizational performance improvement strategies.
All right, that makes sense. Before you go, I'd like to talk about this push to streamline procurement through category management. It's a priority at the Federal Acquisition Service. What happened to strategic sourcing? Is GSA simply rebranding, or is category management entirely different?
Well, to me, it is just another name for strategic sourcing, but I think category management has taken hold. The president has been briefed on this and likes it, and what it's trying to do is really leverage that horizontal spend for all of the non-DoD type spending, the $270 billion. How do we approach that in a more strategic way? Looking at the strategies of who's buying it, how many vehicles are out there, how do you leverage the knowledge across government so the government can be a smarter buyer?
Look into your crystal ball. In the world of tech and government, the world that you deal with, where do you see things in about 6 or 10 months? Getting better, about the same? Have we plateaued, or are you very optimistic?
I'm optimistic. I think the government has had a down period where they didn't talk to industry. And you look at what GSA's done, and this should be a prime example. What they've done through HCaTS is put up the Interact GSA site, which allows for interactive communications with the private sector. And I think that should become a model. And I think there's more and more a desire to partner with industry, listen to them, and communicate with them. And that's a great thing.
I know you talk to leaders around the world. Can they learn from us?
Well, we try to talk to other countries to make sure that they can replicate what we do, where we have a fully transparent, open, competitive system that emphasizes best value for the taxpayer. That's what we try to sell across the world as the best thing you can do for your government mission and for your taxpayers.
It's good to get your insight. Jim Williams, partner at Schambach and Williams Consulting. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Morris.
Defense Secretary Ash Carter personally congratulated the first 2 female soldiers to complete Army Ranger School. Captain Kristen Griest and First Lieutenant Shay Haver graduated on Friday during a ceremony at Fort Benning, Georgia. Barbara Starr has more.
For military women, history is made. For the first time, 2 female soldiers have passed the grueling 62-day Army Ranger training program.
Secretly sense of pride, and I say secretly because we can't really cheer these females on, but it's definitely a humbling experience to kind of sit back and get a chance to see these women come through.
But even after all the hard training, the Pentagon still won't let women actually join the elite 75th Ranger Regiment, one of the nation's premier special operations units. That decision must be made by January. Army women say they want no special treatment. Amber Smith flew helicopters in Iraq and Afghanistan.
There has to be a mission standard, not a gender standard. It needs to be straight across the board, and there needs to be that physical and mental strength to accomplish the mission.
The 75th Ranger Regiment's expertise, large-scale entry into a combat zone under fire, while executing surgical raids on targets to take out any threats. How hard is Ranger School? 400 students started, only 96 graduated. Of the 19 women who began, 16 dropped out. 1 is still working to get through the program. Little sleep and food is just the beginning. Soldiers must do 49 push-ups, 59 sit-ups, a 5-mile run in 40 minutes, a 12-mile foot march in 3 hours, parachute jumps, helicopter assaults, and 27 days of mock combat patrols. The Army's top general has yet to make his recommendation about whether women will actually be allowed to serve as Rangers and in other frontline combat units.
I want to take a hard look at all that and make sure that the standards are being met in the readiness force. There's no doubt in my mind that women can engage in ground combat with the enemies of our nation because they've done it.
And that's the latest from Washington. Thanks for watching. I'm Morris Jones. We know your week is filled with other matters. Save this half hour for us.